So good morning, welcome. For it's time to start this first session of this morning, and this is the last day of this first international conference of the ERC project Graff-IT. And I have the pleasure to give immediately the floor to the colleague Jos Schaken. I'm sorry, Schaken, Leiden University. The place of graffiti in the graphic environment of Kievan Rus, or Kievan, the pronunciation
Kiev.
Kiev, yes, Kiev.
Kiev is Russian. I'm talking Ukrainian today.
Probably you know that the colleague Crystal Zilmer had to leave a day early. And so please.
Thank you very much. Does it work? Yes, it works. Thank you also for the beautiful conference and the organization, Carlo. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here. I should immediately admit that I am not a graffitologist. I deal once in a while with graffiti, but my specialty is I'm a baristologist. Nobody knows what that is. No, nobody knows what that is, because only the baristologists know what baristology is about. In Russian, it is berestologia, and it is the field of dealing with texts written on birch bark. And a birch bark in Russian is a beresta. So we are berestologists. Yes, I love saying that word because nobody knows what it means. But I'm going to talk mainly, I'm going to talk about birch bark letters, birch bark records, and also going to talk about graffiti, and then especially graffiti outside of Kievan Rus, pilgrimage graffiti, which happens to be in several places in the Western European world, including Lucca. I will end with Lucca. Yes, that's pretty much what I'm going to do. I'm not going to stand here because otherwise I cannot walk. And if I talk, I always walk. Yeah, well, these are the topics we'll be talking about. So it's pretty much the peculiar case of birch bark, the place of graffiti, and the last part of it will be pilgrimage graffiti. And I will also be talking about the exciting, complicated, difficult distinction between graffiti inscriptions, manuscripts, and all kinds of other things. And I will introduce to you, probably many of you already know this, a different kind of approach to writing in general in the Middle Ages, an approach made by Simon Franklin from Oxford University. He talks about primary, secondary, and tertiary writing. That's pretty much what I want to tell. First of all, Kievan Rus, what is it? Well, this is Kievan Rus, which means we're talking about the late 9th to mid-13th centuries, which is the period before the Mongol invasion, which changed life of the East Slavs, the Eastern Slavs, dramatically. And it was a federation of principalities that now are located in present-day Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia. This is the East Slavic world, and the most important principalities was the Principality of Kiev in present-day Ukraine, and the field I am working in is located actually in the other main principality, Novgorod. We're talking about, Novgorod means new town. So there are many Novgorods in the world, and also even in Russia there are many Novgorods. There are also Novgorods in Italy because Napoli is Neapolis, new town. So I'm talking about Veliki Novgorod. Most people who know something about Russia think I'm talking about Nizhny Novgorod, but that's another place. It's far, far away from Veliki Novgorod. So these were the two main principalities in the late 9th until the mid-13th centuries, and then later on also. This is what we have. Here you have 18 objects, carefully selected, of course, by me, which pretty much shows what we can find. The written remains of Kievan Rus. And on the right, in the right upper corner, you see a manuscript, a page of a manuscript, parchment. But you see also writings on stone, on wood, on textiles, on doors, bronze doors, seals, coins, all these kinds of things happen. And you see also writing, for instance, here and here on pieces, small pieces of birch bark. Small pieces of birch bark. So this is what we have. And I divided it into 1, 2, and 3. And I will come back to that later. Why did I divide this in 1, 2, and 3? So in principle, we have all types of writing surfaces that you're familiar with: wood, wax, metal, parchment, stone, clay, textiles, the usual stuff, so to speak. But what is not very usual is writing on birch bark. So let's talk a little bit about birch bark. Birch bark letters are excavated. They lie in the ground. And then you might think, how does that happen? Are they still, how were they preserved in the mud, so to speak? Well, the soil in the northern parts of Russia is very low in oxygen, and organic material survives. If you go to other places in the East Slavic world, that does not happen. So these things might have been writing on birch bark might have been the case also in Kiev, but nothing survived because the ground, the soil is very, very different. So you need the right conditions to preserve pieces of birch bark. Excavations has been going on since the early 1950s, and we now have exactly 1,290 letters and records. Almost 1,300. Each year there's an excavation, and each year in the summer they find new text. Sometimes you dig for a whole the whole of summer and nothing, and you find nothing. These are the bad years. And sometimes you find 60, 70 letters and records. So birch barks are very small. The usual birch bark does not contain more than 20 words. Like graffiti, it's small. And here we have 2 examples. These are drawings of birch barks. What kind of topics do we find on birch bark? Actually, everything you can imagine. Everything you write down in a WhatsApp nowadays, you can also, in former days, in the medieval times, you can also write on birch bark. Daily life. It is daily life. Letters on commerce, finance, law, government, family life, household management, everything you can imagine. Also records, lists, shopping lists, and things like that. Official documents, drafts of wills and contracts, not the real stuff, because then it was transferred to parchment. Everything you can imagine. And here you see a beautiful birch bark. This is, by the way, number 1,000. It was a big festival, a big happy day when number 1,000 was found in 2012 on the 25th of July. We remember these things. Why is actually this type of writing so important? So what? Well, actually, we now know far more about the organization of a medieval society, so-called history from below. So not from official documents or chronicles, but really what people did in this society. Literacy, we know far more about the spread of literacy. I'm not saying that everyone could read and write, but there was some sort of rather large population of people who used birch bark to communicate from over distance. Not only men, but also women. We have evidence of 100, 120 women who wrote letters. Then you might ask yourself, well, did they write them themselves? Yes, we have evidence that many of them wrote the letters themselves. I'm a historical linguist, by the way, so I'm highly interested in the grammar of the Old Novgorodian language. Nobody's very interested in that, but I like this as a historical linguist. And it turns out that the people there in the northwestern parts of present-day Russia spoke a language which was very different from what is now spoken in Moscow. Very different. We know more about social linguistics. We know more about the pragmatics, the way you communicate on Birchbark was pretty much the same way as we communicate now on WhatsApp. It's more like you transfer a spoken kind of language on paper. It's very different. Let's give some examples. Pay before Christmas. From Kosnyatin to Zhdan. Pay Stepanets before Christmas. If you don't pay by then, it will be double that amount that you'll spend on the official sent to enforce the debt collection. It's always about, it's many times about money. And especially people want to have money or they want to spend money and they warn each other by means of writing a birchbark. This one, grain is cheap here. A letter from Gurgi to father and to mother. After selling the farm, come, plural, here, either to Smolensk or to Kiev. Grain is cheap. If you don't come, send me a note saying whether you are well. Very common. And also simply saying, telling also, well, send me a letter back if I want to hear from you. So it was quite normal to communicate through birchbark over distance. Here you have a famous person on birchbark. This person is called Onfim. He must have been a young boy. And he is nowadays also famous because he has his own webpage on Wikipedia in 20 different languages. Can you imagine? So you can look for him, type in Onfim Wikipedia. I don't know if it's available in Italian, but it's in English and Russian and all kinds of other languages. And you see, he's practicing the alphabet here. And if you're bored, you doodle all kinds of things also on your sheet of birchbark. And there you see him as a warrior. He writes his own name. Here he uses a very common kind of expression, which you see everywhere on graffiti in church walls. So he knew this by heart. And it says, Господи, помози рабу своему Onfimu, Lord, help your servant Onfim. You find it everywhere on church walls. And so he knew this by heart and he wrote it down and then he got bored and he was doodling around. Yep. But what else do we have? I want you and you me. From Mikita to Malania, marry me. I want you and you me. Very simple, very simple. It cannot be simpler. And there is a witness and that he is called Ignat. And then it cuts off because it was not preserved entirely. Well, this is also a piece of information that is interesting because you normally think that marriages were arranged by matchmakers. And here you have a person directly writing to his future wife. So this is all small pieces of evidence that changes our view or adjusts our view or complements our view of the medieval world. Now, is birchbark, is this graffiti? Yes or no? I think no. It is not graffiti. But what is graffiti? So I carefully checked the conference abstract to find out whether I'm here in the right place, yes or no. So, and here are some quotes. Perhaps indeed, based on these quotes, birchbarks are graffiti because it says in the conference abstract, not primarily intended for this purpose by means of an occasional tool. Well, birchbark was not primarily intended to, well, that's a bit of a tricky question for the purpose of writing. It also says, well, the status of the writers were not to satisfy the request of a commissioner. That is completely true when it comes to birch bark. You write it yourself. And then the third thing is also very interesting, because the abstract says, from a linguistic viewpoint, graffiti show all the gradations of the development of Latin. In my case, this is Church Slavic. Towards the Romance. In my case, this is East Slavic vernaculars. So we have this whole broad range between, on the one hand, the official Latin/Church Slavic language, to what people really spoke at home and or in the market in their towns. So you have this whole range. So yes, perhaps yes, but if you say, okay, let's do this, then you also might think of other corpora that are exactly the same. For instance, you have we all know the wooden tablets from Vindolanda, or not? Yeah, well, from the 1st century AD, 2nd century AD, something like that. And what Crystal did not talk yesterday about this specific corpus on runes. These are medieval runic texts on small wooden sticks from the Briggenwolf in Bergen in Norway. Here you see them. So these are different kinds of runes than Crystal Zilmer talked about yesterday afternoon. And if you then compare them, for instance, on the left, you see runic text from Bergen, and on the right, you see a letter written on birch bark. And they both deal with the same thing. It's about sending on the left probably 100 stockfish. And on the right, it is also about sending something, because Boris is writing to Nastasia, perhaps his wife. As soon as this letter arrives, send me a man on a stallion, because I have a lot of work to do. And send a shirt. I forgot a shirt. By the way, this is number 43. There is a follow-up on this letter. I don't have a picture of that. That's number 46. And now Nastasia is writing herself. And she writes, my Boris is no longer alive. She writes to her brothers and asks her brothers, how are you going to help me and my children? So this is a little drama unfolding on birch bark at the late 14th century. Still, yes, I don't think that birch bark is graffiti. No, because everything you write on birch bark, you could also have written on parchment. But the whole problem with parchment, it is far too expensive. And the messages you send, like a WhatsApp, is ephemeral. It's private and it's ephemeral. As soon as you have read your WhatsApp, you can delete it. Well, the letters were thrown away as soon as the person wrote it. Sometimes they were kept when it was a records, household lists, and things like that. Now, Simon Franklin wrote a beautiful book. Do I have? Yeah, the title, Writing Society and Culture in Early Rus. Crystal also mentioned it yesterday. She's also a big fan of this book in 2002. And he says, actually, that the traditional division between, on the one hand, manuscripts, and on the other hand, everything else, is not very appropriate. It is unbalanced. It is also hierarchical, yes, in terms of, well, manuscripts are the thing you study and everything else is secondary, or, well, graffiti, text on potsherds, or whatever you have. So it is not a balanced kind of division. And indeed, on the top right, you see all these 18 objects I showed in the beginning. If you would divide them between manuscripts and the rest, you would have this. That is very strange. or not. I find that strange. The overall graphic environment is misrepresented by the simple contrast between manuscript and non-manuscript, like marked, unmarked in social sciences, for instance. That is strange. So he comes up with an alternative division between primary, secondary, and tertiary writing. Primary writing, and it all has to do with the writing object. Primary writing is written on objects that were produced to write on. They were made to write on, like parchment, of course, to begin with. Secondary writing is integral to, but not the main purpose of it, of the object's production. These are objects created with writing, but not necessarily for writing. That's another category. And the last category, and then we're talking, I think, about graffiti, in my sense of the word, but it could be different, is that which is produced on objects which already exist for other purposes. So this division is on the one hand clear, but is also very fluid, because you have all kinds of situations where primary, secondary, and even tertiary writing come into play in a single object. And it makes the whole, and that is, I find very interesting, it makes it all very dynamic too. Simon Franklin, for instance, says a manuscript book, primary writing with captioned illustrations, secondary writing, and later marginalia, arguably tertiary writing. Or a wall painting covered in graffiti. You have all kinds of interactions between these types of writings. He also says it is dynamic, but he also warns us, because he wrote his book specifically for the writing situation in Kievan Rus. But if you go to other places in, for instance, the Greek-Roman world, then you might want to reconsider this division. And in the footnote, he says, for example, without significant modification, the scheme could probably not usefully be applied to a society such as ancient Greece or Rome, where substantial amounts of the extant specimens of writing are commemorative inscriptions on stone. We hardly have commemorative inscriptions on stone in Kievan Rus. There are a few examples, but no more than 10. No more than 10. So if you look at it from the Roman perspective, so to speak, you might want to reconsider this division. That doesn't work. Here it says textiles, and here it says liturgical textiles, for those of you who are interested. I have no clue about, I don't know anything about liturgical textiles. But this is actually the division you can make in the case of the graphic environment of Kievan Rus. And now it becomes balanced. 1, 2, 3. In the beginning I said I made a division into 1, 2, 3. Now here you have 1, 2, and 3. And 1 is parchment, namely manuscripts. The surface can also be birch bark. And the third surface we all know are waxed wooden tablets. Yes, we don't have many waxed wooden tablets. I think we have something like 13, 14. But these are primary writing. Secondary writing, miniatures, all kinds of seals, coins, snake amulets, etc., etc. Tertiary writing, later marginalia, utensils like a wooden spoon over there on in number 3, a wooden spoon with an inscription of the owner of that spoon. Don't touch my spoon. All kinds of other things, church walls, monumental stone, pre-existing monumental stones on which later inscriptions have been made. Silver coins, ingots, silver goblets, all kinds of things. So this is actually the whole graphic environment, I think. Yes, the whole problem also with this discussion about inscriptions or graffiti is also, you know, we are getting more and more specialized. And I was talking yesterday evening to some of my colleagues here. You see, if you deal with coins, you're a numismatist, or how do you call that? Yeah, so you're in a very different field suddenly. If you deal with birchbark, you're a biristologist. If you deal with official documents, you are a diplomaticist. My God. You have all these sub-specialized fields. That doesn't really help, because if you want, I know nothing about coins, but if I want to spend my life on coins, working on coins, I could easily do that for the rest of my life. And then still, at a certain point after 30 or 40 years, you will have some knowledge about medieval coins. Do you want to spend your life on medieval coins? Well, me not, but you can ask me also, do you want to spend your time on birchbark ladders? Yes, happily. Well, you have to make choices in life. Is this interesting? Yes. Oh, what kind of graffiti do we have, actually? Graffiti in the sense, what I think is graffiti. Well, the usual stuff. There's nothing special about it. Graffiti which merely records the own creation and creator, X wrote this, or votive graffiti, Lord help thy servant, X. Commemorative graffiti concerning death, concerning actions, concerning transactions, and also subliterary graffiti, quotation sprayers, sayings, epigrams, insults, of course. Yes, so it's not very uncommon. How much do we have? Well, we don't know how much pieces of graffiti, and I guess if you talk only about church walls, then approximately in the big places, the big churches, the big churches are always called in Kievan Rus the Saint Sophia, because they were all based on the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. Kiev, approximately 2,000 pieces of graffiti. Novgorod and surroundings, approximately 1,300. This is a very rough estimate. Polotsk is a principality which is now located in Belarus, approximately 200. But all in other places you also have a lot of graffiti. So thousands and thousands. I'm going to skip this. Well, how much time do I have? -5. Okay, now I'm going to skip this. I'm going to skip this. I'm going to skip this. I'm going to give you one example of graffiti on church walls. Only one. This is a graffiti in Cyrillic. The writing is always in Cyrillic. There are a few exceptions, because we also have writings in Novgorod in Glagolitic. And Glagolitic was the first Slavic alphabet that soon perished, only survived somewhere in the Dalmatia area. This is Cyrillic. It is located not in Kievan Rus, but it is located in the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul. And it says, Holy Sophia, Gretchen wrote this. And also, Lord, help your servant Olisei. We're talking about a person, Olisei Gretchen. Gretchen is an extremely unusual name in Kievan Rus. We only know of one person who was named Olisei Gretchen. Gretchen is actually Greek. It means Greek. He must have been from Greek origin. So here you have his writing. He was in Istanbul. He was in Constantinople. And he wrote down the usual stuff. Gretchen wrote this. Gretchen psala. Psala means write. Wrote. We also know Gretchen on birchbark. This is the same Gretchen, because he was the recipient of several letters. Gretchen was a priest and an icon painter, we know. And here it says, a bow from the priest to Gretchen, so another priest. Paint for me 2 6-winged angels on 2 small icons above the deisis, the intercession. And I salute you. God will be the guarantor for the reward, or else we too can come to terms. So he doesn't want to pay. That's pretty much the story. So we also know him on birchbark, but we also know him on parchment. Here you see a parchment text, namely the first Novgorod Chronicle, where it says, in the same year, Archbishop Martyrius had the Church of the Holy Mother of God at the gates painted, and the painter was Gretchen Petrovich. So that is Odyssey Gretchen. So we know this person on all kinds of writing services. Here it is. Good seen in Old Novgorodian spelling, by the way. Very unusual. Let's talk a little bit about pilgrimage inscriptions, because these East Slavic people, they traveled around. They traveled to, for instance, Istanbul, the Hagia Sophia. We have approximately 70 old East Slavic inscriptions from the 11th to the 17th century, autographs of people from all places, all kinds of places, including Halich in Ukraine. And 14 inscriptions are published on a beautiful website, by the way. I forgot to mention that, epigraphica.ru, which includes a growing database of inscriptions. Now, I think I have to disappoint you because everything is in Russian. There is no English version. Okay, but nevertheless, it's fun looking around. So they traveled to Istanbul. They traveled to Bethlehem, the Basilica of the Nativity. 2 inscriptions are published, and 9 inscriptions are on the website, and 9 inscriptions are in Artamonov et al. O Lord, help thy servant Emilian, son of Michael Ivanich, with his father and with his mother and with all the brotherhood, always and now and ever and unto ages of ages. Amen. So that's the text. But they also traveled to the west, to Western Europe. And actually, they traveled to this place, Santiago de Compostela. And we have evidence, and Estelle knows exactly what I'm talking about, evidence of inscriptions in Pons or Pont, whatever, Pons here, an inscription in Saint-Gilles, and the last inscription, set of inscriptions, is in Lucca. These are the 2 ones in France. And this one is this picture is from the inscription in Pons, which says the usual stuff. "O Lord, help thy servant Semka Ninoslavich," dated between 1180 and 1250. The interesting thing is this is all the usual stuff. This is all Old Novgorodian, by the way, but there are 2 letters there that do not have an explanation. If anyone knows what EA means, I have no clue. We have no clue. It is located here. So here it says Pomozi, and then you have EA. But I mean, it just looks like it's part of the same time. Does it look? Yes. But Estelle, do you think? You've seen it. This from here is hard. But you see, the "e" is different from here. This is the "e" in Cyrillic, and this is in Latin kind of "e." Yeah. So, but it has been, but it was placed immediately after the first line, as if it was some sort of extra message or whatever. Yes, let's end with Lucca. 5 inscriptions, 7 inscriptions identified by the top graffitologist in Russia, which is Sava Mikheyev. And he wrote an article last year on the inscriptions in Lucca. Here you see 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if you look at the wall, because it's located in the Duomo di San Martino. Do you know what this is? This important? Yeah. Okay. I didn't know that. It's a cathedral. Yes, I know. No, but I know what it is, but I was not aware that it was so. Okay. Well, here you see 1, 2, 3, and 4. It says Viscosha from Polotsk wrote this. Lazar wrote this. The clerk from Murom wrote this. Sava from Bryansk wrote this. And all together. So that is interesting. And Mikheyev, they all dated between the 12th and beginning of the 13th century. And Sava Mikheyev speculates the following: the fact that at least 3, this is my translation because the article is in Russian. Everything is in Russian. That is disappointing for you if you want to know more. The fact that at least the fact that at least 3 natives of Rus who left their autographs on the same stone block came from different Rus cities, Polotsk, Murom, Bryansk, makes one wonder if they were part of an organized group. I don't know if this is true or not. You can speculate on that. And he also says, why did they travel to Lucca? Yeah, the Volto Santo. Yes, I had to look that up too. Sorry, I only do Birchbark letters. So, and they were obviously these pilgrims from far away from Rus. They worshipped this Volto Santo di Lucca. That's it. Thank you very much.